SSA, SSI, SSDI, Social Security, retirement, pension, supplemental security income, Social Security, disability insurance for all beneficiaries, and depending on what check that you receive from the U.S. Treasury or direct deposit to your bank, Wells Fargo, Chase, Citi, PNC, Bank of America, or even a credit union, there is an overwhelming amount of interest from viewers asking me questions about whether or not they will receive their money on time if there is a debt default that affects the government, and most importantly, the Social Security Administration, ultimately hindering their ability to process payments for fixed income retirees, those dependent on the monies, the disabled, and others as well. I am getting flooded with emails, direct messages from Instagram, DMs, messages, and conversations on Patreon, as well as direct communication with clients who have been onboarded for consulting and coaching. Now, I want to answer as many questions as I can, as many questions as possible, but I don't want this video to be too long, so please allow me to focus on what could happen if the U.S. defaults specifically. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. My name is Kevin, Kevin in all caps, youtube.com/@Kevin247. Diversity, security, and cash flow. My three most important pillars, and in conjunction with the 5 basic principles of building financial freedom and wealth, is what the richest Americans practice. And it would be silly for us to not at least examine what they do, how they do it, and how much money they make. Because I can tell you that they are not concerned about a U.S. debt default, at least not from the standpoint of not getting their government check on time, or possibly missing meals, going hungry, experiencing food shortages or empty shelves at home and bare pantries, or possibly worse scenarios of being evicted, tossed out on the streets, or foreclosed on, potentially becoming homeless and forced to live in their car, truck, or van. That is, if they still own a vehicle and it hasn't been repossessed by the tow truck company that the auto loan lender's bank hired to reclaim their asset that you haven't been able to make payments on for the last month or so. Do you ever find it odd that many of the elected officials in Washington, in Congress, earn an annual salary of approximately $100K a year, but they are millionaires by majority? Meanwhile, there are many everyday people out here in this world working hard and trying to survive on the same income salary, if not more, and are nowhere close to having such a substantial net worth, a net worth total crossing over into the 7-figure category. Simply put, they don't rely on their income to survive. And neither should we when you think about it. We should all honestly be in much higher income brackets than we are, right? Don't you agree? Gold could rally to a new record high if the U.S. defaults and investors flee to safety. Now, we've spoken about gold before and other hard assets as a way to hedge against inflation and protect ourselves in these scary economic times. A default could push gold to a new record high as investors would seek safe havens in the asset class. The same assets that BRICS nations are accumulating by the ton, many tons, as a potential backing to their new central bank digital currency. In a default, a weaker dollar and falling treasury yields could also bring gold up, which is going to be a huge plus for those who are invested. Even if a last-second deal was reached, gold could see a near-term rise, according to RBC Capital Markets. This precious metal has flirted this month with its record high of $2,075.47 per ounce, set in August of 2020. Pay attention, folks. And while it pulled back this past week, gold is still up 11% year to date and 25% from a November low. That would have been a great time, a great buying opportunity. But we need to pay attention now before it gets too high. An increase of $100 per ounce would put gold above the record high. And on Friday, it was trading at about $2,020 per ounce. Now, ladies and gentlemen, gold is a great hedge. It's a great diverse method of securing your wealth. Remember, diversity, security, and cash flow. But if we're seeing gold skyrocketing, I mean, these are clear signs and indication of something even bigger, which is why I personally would definitely be involved and invested. And the beauty of it is that you can get invested without having to have so much money to do it by buying fractions. Now we can talk about that further. I'm actually working on putting together a full package and module that my wife, Michelle, Squirrel Tribe, and I will be sharing on Patreon for those who have been asking, who are interested. And whether it be gold, whether it be silver, platinum, uranium, when you talk about uranium's huge, and or stocks, crypto, real estate and investment trusts, REITs, farmland, vineyards, wine, bourbon, whiskey, it doesn't matter. The ability to invest today at a fraction is a game changer, especially for those who may say, I don't have a lot of money to invest. Because that just means that you can still invest in these great opportunities and these great companies that could potentially provide you with some substantial returns, passive income, dividend payments with whatever money you have available at the time. There's an old saying, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's how we need to look at approaching investing, approaching building wealth for those who may feel as though they don't have enough to start. But either way, this is by no means me trying to tell you to jump into gold, head first into the deep end. But we do need to be paying attention to what could potentially happen. And with that potential, I'm getting a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, a lot of DMs and messages of people stating that this potential debt default would literally wipe them out. It would be catastrophic, sadly enough. And I hate to say it, I really do. This does not bring me joy. But I also feel as though it's very important that we have these tough conversations, these tough talks that people don't really want to have before it's too late. I am not saying that Social Security recipients will not receive their checks, but I am saying that the data, the reports state that there could be probably a disruption, a delay. I actually received a comment and it says that I used to be a federal contractor for years and now I'm retired. It seemed that nearly every week we were wondering if we would be furloughed. I was for 2 months and had to put rent and groceries on a credit card while being forbidden to get another job. When I went back, it was week after week of wondering when a budget would be drawn up, but there would be an emergency extension that would keep me employed. Year after year, month after month, and week after week of this is very stressful. And yes, absolutely. Fortunately, you had the ability to leverage and lean on your credit to get you through that rough patch. And that is potentially what we could likely see if there is a default by the U.S. Treasury, by the government themselves and their budget. Both sides of the aisle here arguing, pointing fingers, and nothing being accomplished. And that stress, that added weight is exactly what we could potentially see happen and be faced with. And in the interim, do you have a strategy? Do you have a plan? Do you have a backup? Do you have a safety net? Do you have an alternative? That's what's most important here, is knowing that this could happen. And if it did, how are you going to survive? How have you prepared to protect yourself? And if your answer is you've got chickens and you've been planting seeds, great. But how is that going to pay your medical bills? How is that going to buy you the drugs and prescriptions that you need? How is that going to put gas in your car, in your vehicle, or charge your EV, your Tesla, or whatever it may be? How's that going to pay your rent? How's that going to pay your mortgage? I'm all for people building a sustainable lifestyle, living off the grid, collecting rainwater, using solar powered energy, stockpiling to your heart's content. However, we mustn't ignore the elephant in the room. And that is that we need money to make these things happen. And another one says that we will definitely be getting our Social Security checks even if the government defaults simply because of its It's self-funded by us and our employers. And you're absolutely right. If you were to see a temporary delay, you would eventually get your money. But the question is, how long can you wait? How long can you last? How long can you survive on the resources that you have available, particularly those resources tied to receiving your money, your checks? That would be your savings, your capital, your cash, your credit, maybe, if you want to use credit in the interim, which would, potentially put you in a situation of having to pay interest. Higher interest rates that the Fed have continuously been pumping up for, I think, 10 or 12 consecutive months now. That's the real question. Because it's a possibility. Gold, Market Insider, Business Insider, gold could rally to a new record high if the U.S. defaults while investors flee to safety. Investors flee to safety. They're smart with their money. They're paying attention to the warning signs. They're reading the tea leaves, so to speak. The climate is changing. The weather is changing in this economy. Therefore, it is important for us to be prepared for that change of weather. No different from out here in the elements. For instance, you see planes flying overhead, chemtrails through the skies, cloud seeding going on. But at the end of the day, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? Is it going to be a blizzard? Is it going to be a drought? Is it going to be a hurricane or a tornado or tsunami or earthquake? Whatever it may be, we have to be prepared for that by paying attention. I know a lot of you guys watch Ryan Hall. If you know the weather forecast, you're going to plan for it. So why are we not doing the same for the economic forecast? Why are we not planning for that? And if your plan is literally hope, well, hope is not a plan. And I hope that the government doesn't default. I hope that Social Security recipients get their money on time. I hope that everything is fine. But I'm planning on it not being the case and making sure that I have a viable means of maintaining my own personal diversity, security, and cash flow in the interim. Now, I've shown many how they can get a hold of these appreciating assets and with little money to start. Because at over $2K an ounce, that is a pretty steep hill to climb. But in due time, wealth can be had, substantial wealth can be built, and we can all become millionaires and earn six-figure income salaries to boot. Now, I honestly hope that we don't see an interruption to the congressional budget because that would be terrible. I don't want to see America take a knee with a shutdown that could temporarily wipe out Social Security recipients and all the pain that would result because of lawmakers bickering and fighting across the aisle. Ultimately, agreeing to disagree and continuing to not take action. The same inaction that will harm nearly 66 million Americans who rely on these fixed income payments. I mean, I know if I saw a disruption to one of my income streams, it would be aggravating and inconvenient, but I think I'd be fine. However, I know that isn't necessarily true for everyone. These risks need to be mitigated. Preparation must be made so that these problems can be avoided and at the very least, resolved.